We've called you today because we want to address the issue of the delay in the appointment of judges. And I am here with me, the counsel of the branch of the Nairobi, LSK. We'll be reading a statement, and thereafter we could take any questions that you would have for us. So on the 27th of August 2010, the people of Kenya proudly promulgated a transformative constitution with the sole aspiration of ending the era of the all-powerful imperial presidency and its vestiges, and in its place assert the sovereignty of the people and the supremacy of the constitution. On the 9th of June 2020, standing on the steps of the hallowed step of the State Law Office, the Attorney General, retired Judge Honorable Kihara Kariuki, pronounced to the whole world the return of the imperial presidency. The Nairobi branch of the Law Society of Kenya condemns in the strongest terms possible the statement by the Attorney General, and we are vigorously opposed to the attempts by the executive to see a return of the dubious historical relationship between the executive and the judiciary, where the latter was a servant of the former, serving at the pleasure and whims of the executive. The cost paid by Kenyans in the clamor for the new constitution is too big, and it is our duty to pay homage to that sacrifice and remind the executive that the blood and the death of those who fought for the new democratic order will not be in vain. The Nairobi branch of the Law Society of Kenya is home to over 70% of the membership of the Law Society, and the bulk of whom offer services at the law courts. We have witnessed a slow and gradual decline of the conditions of practice, which now stand at deplorable levels due to delays in hearing and determination of cases. It is now safe to say that the courts within Nairobi and Kiambu counties are fast approaching paralysis, and this has been aggravated by the President's refusal to perform his constitutional duties and appoint the 41 judges recommended for appointment by the Judicial Service Commission. Regrettably, the Attorney General, who coincidentally participated in making the recommendations for appointment, has stated in quite clear and unequivocal terms that the executive will not be pressured to appoint the 41 judges on the grounds that certain state organs have provided adverse reports against some of the judges. The Attorney General is categorical that the executive will not obey court orders it does not agree with, and that the whims of the executive supersede the authority of the court and the Constitution. The Nairobi branch is of the firm conviction that the Attorney General has demonstrated the highest dereliction of duty and is no longer a servant of the Constitution and the people of Kenya, but rather a glorified altar boy at the temple of executive impunity. The intention of our cherished constitutional architecture was to transform the relationship between the judiciary and the executive, where the former was intended to be independent of the executive and accountable only to the Constitution and the people of Kenya. In recent times, we have witnessed year-to-year reduction of the judiciary budget to a point where the judiciary is no longer able to deliver is no longer able to support delivery of justice. This has placed a heavy burden on access to justice and has put the reach of justice above the ability of ordinary citizens and seriously affected our ease of doing business indexes in dispute resolution. The near collapse of the justice sector has serious implications on the ability of the country to attract reputable investors and in the long run will serve to cripple economic growth and ultimately usher in civil unrest. The Nairobi branch believes there is enough conjecture and evidence to support the imaginable proposition that the President of the Republic of Kenya has either received misleading and incompetent advice or that he has no regard for the Constitution he swore to protect. We reiterate that the qualifications for appointment of judges are well known as laid out in the Constitution and the enabling statute. There is no requirement that the applicant should obtain intelligence clearance. In fact, how such clearance can be obtained, can be sought and obtained, is as mysterious as the contents of the report. As a branch, we cannot comprehend how such a mysterious report can be the most critical qualification. We believe our Constitution and the law have sufficient safeguards to resolve issues raised by the executive through the intelligence report, but refusal to obey court orders and discharge constitutional functions is not one of them. The Nairobi branch stands in solidarity with the Chief Justice and the judiciary as a whole and calls on the President of the Republic of Kenya to lead by example and restore the sanctity of court orders for the greater good of ensuring social justice and order. We implore the President to uphold the rule of law and restore his image as a symbol of national unity and pride. We call upon our members to take up the ambassadorial role on behalf of the judiciary and the people of Kenya and champion the clamor for obedience of court orders. We are only safe if we pay homage to the supremacy of the Constitution and place our aspirations in the rule of law and not the rule of man. It is also time to re-examine the role and place of the membership of the Attorney General at the Judicial Service Commission. There is an obvious conflict of interest as the current impasse has demonstrated. The Attorney General cannot be part of a decision and later be the one to cast aspersions on the decision and challenge the same in court. The executive arm is heavily represented in the composition of the Judicial Service Commission, and it is expected that any concerns by the executive will find voice through such representation. Lastly, we call on all Kenyans of goodwill to appreciate the perilous times we are witnessing and the strong resurgence of imperial power and the sustained attacks and weakening of the judiciary. The Constitution of Kenya seeks to explore the potential to develop our country by placing significant formal restraints on executive power. It behoves on all of us to resist this slow and dangerous pushback. We must call out executive impunity and shun it in all its manifestations. Imagine such power in the hands of your enemies. That is the end of our statement. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason why we had to call this press statement, this press briefing, is to protest the statements that have been made by the Attorney General. The Attorney General has stated that they have adverse reports that were prepared by the intelligence community against some of the judges, and it is for that reason that despite the presence of a court order ordering the president to appoint the judges, that the president will not comply on the basis of those reports. It is our view that the president and the Attorney General cannot condemn judges unheard. They cannot condemn the people of this country to hardships arising from the backlog in courts just because they have certain reports which cannot be disclosed, and as the Attorney General has said, they are for the eye of the president only. And we take the position that that is a very dangerous precedent, because it means that the president is above the law, is above the Constitution, and can condemn you on the basis of a report which he is not obliged to even disclose. It is very, very sad. It is a sad day in this country that the Attorney General can take such a position when constitutionally the Attorney General is required by law to protect and defend the Constitution. So where there is a court order, unless the court order has been stayed or varied, the constitutional edict is that the government must comply with that order. Where are these judges supposed to go and get this security intelligence clearance from? If all the judges have met the qualifications that have been set out in the Constitution and have qualified on the grounds of leadership and integrity as set out in the Constitution, which other requirements, which other mysterious requirements are these? And it is even more mortifying that those reports are only available to the president and cannot be shared with those they have been made against for purposes of them clearing their name. So we believe that the main reason why the judges have not been appointed is not because they lack in integrity. Perhaps it is because they actually have integrity, and the intention is for the president to exercise veto power in the appointment of judges that he does not have. We do not lose sight of the fact that the Chief Justice would be going into retirement in the course of the year. Could it be the reason why the President and the Attorney General are very keen so that they can influence and determine the next Chief Justice? Those are serious questions to ponder. And we ask all Kenyans, all the advocates based in Nairobi branch, to champion the return of the rule of law. Because if we go down the route that we are going, it is a very dangerous return of the one-man rule. And for that reason, we ask the President to rise above the need to revisit the judiciary, to rise above the bad advice that he has been receiving, and to comply with the Constitution. The legacy he leaves behind would be determined by how his government has scored when it comes to matters of rule of law and the administration of justice. And that is the only way that we can be sure that even if we have somebody else in State House who does not agree with you, that you would be safe. It is only, we can only find safety in the rule of law and not in the rule of man. Thank you so much.
Question.
Yes.
Now, as you rightly put it, that the AG sits in the JSC, and now this difference between him and the Chief Justice, how does it impact on the JSC? Does it mean that there's no unity, collective responsibility in the Judicial Service Commission? Number two, the second question, as LSK, the way we see things go, it is like the JSC and the Chief Justice is standing its ground that the judges must be appointed according to the court orders. The executive, the president, and the AG, on the other hand, are saying we are not going to appoint judges with integrity issues as LSK. And as you put it, Nairobi has the largest members of LSK. What is your way forward? Because it's like just talk and no action. What are you going to do about it if the dispute persists? The president refuses to appoint these judges. Are you just going to continue just issuing statements and no action?
Thank you for that question. The only tool that we have at our disposal are the constitutional means that are available to us. They may include picketing. They may include, as the national office has said, the filing of a motion for removal of the presidency on accounts of gross violation of the Constitution, an impeachment motion. The court has already ruled that the president is in violation of the Constitution. So those are options that are available and would be explored. But the proper and right thing to do is to obey the orders that are there. That is the proper and right thing to do. Because if we disregard the authority of the court, if we disregard court orders, what are we saying about the rule of law? Does it mean that court orders have no validity anymore? That is a very dangerous route that the president is taking this country to. And we therefore implore, and this is the reason why we are calling this press conference, to implore upon the president that please observe the rule of law, because the route that you are taking can only lead to civil anarchy. Secondly, the conundrum here is that the Attorney General has participated in making the decision to recommend those judges. There is collective responsibility on that decision. And that is the reason why we are saying there appears to be an element of conflict of interest. But most importantly, it also puts the JSC itself and its membership at cross purpose, because they appear not to be speaking in one voice.
Looking at it, probably the AG, from the way he responded, it's like the president is just so supposed to be a rubber stamp. That's why he should be given also time to participate in the process of ensuring who sits on the bench of maybe appointment of the judiciary.
When you look at the composition of the Judicial Service Commission, it has about 4 representatives appointed by the president. So those are the representatives of the executive within the Judicial Service Commission. It is our expectation that any complaints or any issues that the executive may have during the process of recruitment are voiced by the members of the Judicial Service Commission. After they have deliberated and made their recommendations, then they are bound by those recommendations. And that is the reason why we are saying that when you look at the entire scenario and consider all the facts, it appears that the reason with which the Attorney General is giving to the country is not a genuine reason, because he participated in the appointment, in recommending the appointment of those judges. So it could only be an ulterior reason. And that is where our fear is. And we are persuaded that it is an ulterior reason, because when you look at the budget of the judiciary, it's been going down as opposed to the other organs of state. The budget has been going up. So it looks like there is a coordinated attack on the institution of the judiciary. Certain magistrates, certain judges have in the course of duty been arrested and criminal charges preferred against them. So there appears to be a pattern of intimidation and harassment of the judiciary, which, if not arrested, is going to lead this country down the path of civil unrest. Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate your being here. We have, I think, circulated some copies of the statement. They are back there. I think we have all our council members here. In the event someone wants to take their names, we have, this is Rose Wavinya, Julia Wanjiru, Colin Warutere, who is our representative of Kiambu, Kennedy Murunga, and Stephen Juma Saini. Those are council members of the Nairobi branch. Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate it.